Need for Speed Undercover would be the final entry to release on the PlayStation 2 console in 2008, which would also see ports added to other systems with the Windows PC, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, alongside handheld systems with the PSP, Nintendo DS, mobile systems, even with the Nintendo Wii, among a whole host of different platforms, and would take a return into the underground street racing environment that would have been seen and made iconic with games like the Underground series, even Most Wanted and Carbon. But this time around you play as an undercover cop trying to take down an illegal racing circus ring, but in order to do that you have to conduct yourself within a variety of different challenges and tournaments, all taking place within illegal street races themselves within the city, to uncover the head of the criminal syndicate to put a stop to them. And very like games previously in the series, if you've played any of the Underground games and Most Wanted more predominantly, you can pretty much travel around the entirety of the city, which you'll need to do in order to gain access to different areas, safe houses. You'll unlock different areas outside of the city limits, even more countryside, as you progress further into the story, where you'll be able to acquire new modes to play and also race with different cars, anything from tuner cars to hatchbacks, exotics. There's a whole wide variety of different styles of cars, both classic, new and modern for the time. Upon its release, however, the game did receive mixed reviews, stating that the game's difficulty and story and somewhat repetitive elements kind of let the game down to a degree. And the game was available even on modern platforms, even digital platforms, up until 2021 when it was removed from online stores. But the game was succeeded by the Need for Speed Shift franchise, alongside of Need for Speed Nitro and Need for Speed World on both the Wii and mobile systems in 2009 and 2010. And it's still a good solid game, regardless of what people may say, but considering the elements based around the game that also has a lot of live action sequences with well-known actors and actresses, even music artists that even would have been seen in very iconic and popular films, one of them being Maggie Q, who was also previously in the fourth Die Hard movie. So the story in the game does play a part in the proceedings on how it will unfold, and it is interesting to say the least. If you have played any of those previous Underground games, there is a certain dynamic to how things play out. Like, in fairness to the game, it is a solid title. It's not the best of this style. If anything, they tried to return to it because they realised that after the previous entry with Pro Street, they took a totally different approach to the series, trying to go for more realism. And while yes, it is a solid title in its own regard, it doesn't feel like a Need for Speed game. It feels like something completely different. So I think the developers wanted to kind of go back to their roots, but unfortunately, with the likes of Need for Speed Underground 2, Most Wanted and even Carbon, for instance, they pretty much set the benchmark for all underground street racing games, and unfortunately everything that came after, while they're good decent titles in their own right, couldn't match that popularity of those earlier entries. Plus at this time, street racing, while yes it was popular, it wasn't the forefront of the social scene as much as it was back in the early 2000s. It's because even in that space of like say 8 or 9 years, the whole dynamic of movies and everything in question was starting to change rapidly, so much to a point that you see it now in today's modern landscape with games, that there's so much change all the time. We as people cannot keep up with it at all, because there's so many games there, you're just thinking to yourself like, what the hell do you play? But in saying that, Need for Speed Undercover is a good game, not the best game of this type in the series, and even though it didn't get as good a reviews compared to previous games, and it wasn't as well fleshed out, as there was a lot of bugs and a lot of problems in it anyway, and didn't sell as well as previous games in saying that too. Yes, there was online features in it, and I will be honest, the online modes, while they were fun to play in short bursts, but as the game went on, it became harder and harder and harder to get access to live servers, and even just to get into a game, especially if you were chasing after the trophies, which I would have been. It took me quite a few years to finally get the platinum in this game on the PS3, and I'd owned the game for quite a few years, because it was very hard to get games to play online, and even at that, when you did get eventually into a game, players were so bloody good that you couldn't win a game anyway. And the same case can be said with more modern games, very hard to win because there's so many good racers online, and plus there's a lot of cheating and there's a lot of people that use glitches to their advantage. So more often than not, trying to find a server that you can play a game legit, very hard to do these days with the online space. That's why I generally have moved away from online gaming in general, because I just don't like the whole emphasis around it in many ways. Now I will from time to time if I feel like it, but majority of the time no, I don't bother. I just like to play games in their original format, like what you can see here, and I enjoy it equally as much today as I've ever done. But in saying that, I think Undercover was the last final hurrah of this genre of games, and predominantly the PS2 generation was, in my opinion, the greatest era for the Need for Speed franchise. While there has been some other really good games that have come out in modern times, they've just never captured the same appeal of this generation, considering the majority of these games are now almost, if not over 20 years old. So that'll tell you their lasting appeal, and they're very hard to live up to. But in saying that, Undercover is still worth a go. I would definitely recommend it. Not the best game of that type, but it's definitely worth a go at least. But regardless of what I think of it, I would love to know your thoughts of the game and the series. What did you think of it overall? Did you enjoy it, or maybe not so much? Or which other games in the franchise are you a fan of? So be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you would like to see more content of all of the other Need for Speed games that did release on the PS2, then you can check out this playlist right here.